Hello and welcome back to Boring Dad Gaming, where today I'm going to be carrying on with Arcadie, Secondborn. So we've had our first day, quite eventful. We're on the run from, a rebellion, I suppose you would say, led by Stanislas Devol, who was orchestrating a peace treaty with the country to the north, and then ended up killing our parents and trying to kill us. So we're now sheltering at a nearby keep with another commander of the army, Cyril, whose second name I can't remember. But we're going to go into the next morning. 3 sharp knocks sound against your door. You open your bleary eyes, and you find yourself in an unknown bed in an unfamiliar place, in total darkness. The door opens and someone enters. I'm not going to jump out of bed or hide. Good morning, I say. A man dressed in black and white strides into your room.
Good morning, Your Highness. My deepest apologies for disturbing you,
he says, holding a tray full of food.
Sir Cyril requested that an early breakfast be delivered to you.
He places it down on the table and promptly takes his leave, bowing on his way out. The appetizing smell of fresh baked goods soon reaches your spot in the bed, under the warm covers. You push them aside, get up groggily and approach the table, slumping into the chair closest to the tray. You don't know how long you've slept for, but you feel like it wasn't nearly enough. Your limbs are still sore and there is a dull ache throbbing at the base of your skull. You inspect the food. Your nose didn't betray you. The tray holds several shapely croissants, some butter, a bowl of warm milk, and a few stripes of dried salted meat, along with a couple of apples and a tall glass of water. I think we should keep our strength up. I think we should eat as much as we can. The warm, inviting smell whets your appetite, and you savour the flaky, chewy and buttery croissants along with the rest of the meal. Afterwards, you get ready for the day. The cupboard holds a clean army uniform for you, probably placed there on Cyril's orders. Once dressed, you come out of your room and are greeted by loud voices reverberating throughout the hallway. You're able to pinpoint their source as you walk past a double door. Officers, 20 at a glance, are having a communal breakfast in the dining hall, boisterous and cheery while they eat. Cyril probably wanted you to have breakfast in your own room to spare you the noise and bluster of this many people eating together. Still, they don't look the least bit bothered at having just lost both their king and queen. Maybe they just haven't been notified yet. You continue walking until you emerge from the grey-stoned hallway into a courtyard with ivory-coloured soil. It's mentioned this ivory-coloured soil before. Soil usually is brown, so ivory, maybe it's very chalky or something, I don't know, strange. You narrow your eyes in the blinding sunlight, blinking until your sight adjusts. A few elm trees pepper the large yard, leaves swaying in the breeze. You spot your horses under a wooden roof a short distance away. They seem healthy and rested, drinking from a trough. Several feet away, the fort's gates are closed and under heavy guard. You notice 3 familiar figures standing nearby. The soft soil grinds under your leather boots as you approach.
Good morning, Your Highness.
Cyril gives you a courteous smile. His hair is very blonde in the sunshine, glowing as though illuminated from within. Hey, Ariana greets you, smiling too. I hope you slept better than I did. Wilfred only nods at you, squinting in the glare. His short chestnut hair is back to its usual tidiness, fringe combed to the side over his blue eyes. He turns back towards the other commander as he starts speaking.
Messages have been sent to the other forts. We should start receiving replies in a matter of days. That should give us an idea of the number of troops they can spare.
Which we need to start preparing a proper plan of attack. Ariana nods decisively, arms clasped behind her body. I notice that your soldiers are in a very good mood. Did you brief them about what happened?
Cyril shakes his head. I believe it would be best if they heard it from you. You are their queen now. You will be leading them into battle. They should get to know you and trust you with their lives.
A rallying speech, then. Ariana stares into the distance. I've always wanted to give one of those.
No time like the present.
Cyril tilts his chin forward towards the door you came through. Soldiers are starting to file out of it, filling the air with their loud babble. That's spelled as in Tower of Babel, not Babel of voices, interestingly. And more pour from different parts of the fort. Cyril excuses himself and marches towards them. Ariana walks past you, patting your shoulder on her way, and goes to stand in the middle of the vast courtyard, her back very straight and her hands perched on her hips. Soldiers pile up in the open yard, lining up where Cyril instructs them to. There must be several hundreds of them. Their chatter quiets gradually, but once they catch sight of your sister, a murmur rises again in the ranks. Ariana, lifting her right hand high, silences the voices. "My loyal brothers and sisters," she begins, voice clear and sharp ringing in the silence, "we have been betrayed. Commander Stanislas Duval is no more. In his place there is now a traitor and a murderer. Yesterday, while they were signing for peace with Coltland, Stanislas assassinated King Levick and Queen Serene." An indignant clamour rises from the crowd. Ariana raises her hand again and the noise dies down. "Stanislas is nothing more than a puppet in Coltland's strings now. We will be doing him a favour when we strike him dead. I, Ariana d'Arcadie, am now your queen. I will lead you into battle against Stanislas, fight by your side as we fell the enemies of our powerful kingdom. I will bleed with you on the battlefield as we destroy any and every threat to the glory of Arcadie. I have no doubt that your valour, your honour, your strength, devotion and loyalty will make us victorious against Coltland, against Stanislas, and against anyone and anything foolish enough to stand in our way. Get ready for battle, my brothers and sisters, for we will spill treacherous blood, claim retribution, and lay waste to their lands." Ariana pulls out her sword, raises it high above her head towards the cloudless sky. It glistens in the sun as she shouts, "Glory to Arcadie!" Soldiers brandish their swords in unison and chant loudly, "Glory to Arcadie!" "Long live the Queen!" a cry shouts once, then echoes again and again, louder and louder. "Long live our Queen Ariana!" You hear and feel the chant in your bones, the thunderous roar ringing in the air. Ariana is now their queen, and she has promised them glory and blood. Well, how do we feel about the war? Determined? Acceptant? Resigned even? Afraid? Or indifferent? I think we'll go with war is inevitable. Here's to hoping we can quickly put this all behind us. That went well. Ariana looks rather pleased with herself, although her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. The soldiers have dispersed now, each carrying on their respective duties. What do we say to her? Well, we're not going to try and parley. I think we tried that. It's quite obvious they want us dead. Let me know if you need my help with anything. Her smile grows, and it's sincere now. Thank you, Bori. She turns her attention elsewhere. I will be mingling with our soldiers. I should get to know the people under my command. Good idea. Cyril nods. You watch as she departs and approaches the men guarding the fort's gates. Wide-eyed at first, they relax bit by bit as Ariana seems to strike an easy conversation with them. Cyril turns to you, a smile spreading his lips. What do you wish to do with your free time, your highness? Can you show him around the fort? Wilfred is barely looking away, his focus on Ariana. He should learn its ins and outs. Cyril glances at Wilfred, then shifts his attention fully back on you. Do you want me to show you around the fort? Why wouldn't he? Wilfred asks, casting a dispassionate look at you. I don't believe Stanislas would attack the fort, but you should know the lay of the land well enough to defend it, should it come to that. That's sensible. Show me around then. Of course. Please follow me. Cyril's smile slides effortlessly back in place as he gestures ahead. Thank you, Cyril. Wilfred gives a nod and walks away to join Ariana near the fort's gates. The visit unfolds as you pass through tall trees and stone walls. The outer ones are made of red brick, giving its distinctive appearance to Fort Queenscliff, while the inner ones are of bulky greyish stone. Once you've moved some distance away from the fort's entrance, the sandy soil makes way to yellow, then lush green grass. It's short and well kept, and there are several well cared for plants and trees in the courtyard. From the looks of it, the inside of the fort mustn't see much combat. As Cyril and you weave through the soldiers, they acknowledge him with a nod and a smile, a respectful "Commander." One of them, a lieutenant judging by his uniform, stops to shake his hand, and Cyril pats his arm in return.
Thomas, Cyril calls him. I don't believe you've met Prince Boring, Queen Ariana's younger brother?
A flicker of surprise widens the man's brown eyes. No, I can't say that I have. An honour to meet you, Your Highness, he says, bowing quickly. There's obviously an opportunity here to just act your character like a complete idiot. Why would you roll your eyes at this man? Oh, it's so tempting to do a second playthrough and just be the worst prince imaginable and just see how different it is. Maybe we will. The honour is all mine, Lieutenant. You reply with a self-assured smile. He smiles back and heads off after bidding you both farewell.
You would do well with the troops, Cyril says. I believe they could come to look up to you. You only need to keep doing what you're doing.
You soon arrive at the far end of the fort, at an angle where the outer walls meet. The sun is still shining brightly in the clear sky above, and you instinctively shield your eyes from its seething rays? Okay. Cyril walks at your right side, his gait steady, steps wide but unhurried, and he gestures at structures and describes them as you pass by.
The fort is divided into 4 identical sections, he explains. There is a mess hall in each of them, as well as barracks for 1,000 soldiers in total. The section you're housed at is meant for the commanders and high-ranking officers. It tends to be quieter than the other wings.
Next, you head towards a small wooden structure propped against the wall. A smith is busy working near a forge, hammering away at a longsword. A few paces away there is a well, and around you notice ivy climbing up every crevice and multicoloured flowers sprouting in patches of grass. You reach the middle of a large fenced-off area. As you stop in its centre, you spot straw dummies stuck in the soil and, further away, round wooden shooting targets planted in the grass, red concentric circles painted on their round surface.
These are the training grounds, Cyril says unsurprisingly. Let me know if you ever want to make use of them, and I'll have the soldiers clear them ahead of time.
There's no need to do that, thank you, or there's not much chance of that happening. Yeah, the first one, I think. There's no need to do that. I'd rather train with our soldiers than alone. Cyril smiles, giving you a quick approving nod.
That is sure to be instructive.
A short walk away, you find yourself at a dead end, closed off to the left by an imposing barricade, and to the right by some sort of storage facility.
This is the armory. It is stocked with swords, bows, shields, armour. The soldiers keep their weapons on their person at all times.
He turns to face you.
You should do so as well. While you are safe here, it's always best to be careful.
A pause.
Well, this is pretty much all of the fort, he concludes.
Cyril, hands clasped behind his lean, athletic frame, awaits either your assessment or your questions. Would you mind me asking you a few questions?
Of course not. Please go ahead.
The fort doesn't see much combat, does it, you ask?
It hasn't in a long time. Besides, I am the leader of the peacekeeping force. I can't exactly have my headquarters looking like a battlefield.
He replies with a jovial smile. Leader of the peacekeeping force, you repeat. Aren't you the commander in the west?
I am.
He says nothing else for a moment, locking his hazel eyes with yours. So what exactly is your role, Sir Cyril?
I am the commander in the west, as well as the leader of the peacekeeping force.
Commanders don't typically hold multiple positions.
They typically don't.
His cheeks dimple as he grins.
I am the commander in the west. As you're well aware, Arrington, your late father's native land, is our western neighbour, and has been our ally ever since your parents' marriage. The Western Front doesn't require much of my attention, as you can imagine, so I spend most of my time acting as the leader of the peacekeeping force.
He looks up a moment, as a sweet breeze shuffles the tree's leaves above your heads.
My role is to maintain order in the kingdom, he continues, which also includes presiding over the noble assembly.
All right, so what does the peacekeeping force do?
Exactly what its name entails.
As he speaks, his face seems to close off, assuming a slightly colder countenance.
As the army fights off and subdues outside threats, the peacekeeping force keeps any inside disturbance under control, by any means necessary.
What's the noble assembly? His eyes flick to the side a moment, and he acknowledges a passing soldier with a quick smile, before shifting his full attention to you again.
Members of Arcadie's noble houses can petition for a seat if they feel their station warrants it. The Queen or King ultimately decides for or against it, based on intelligence and reports gathered by yours truly. Families need to hold either a certain amount of power, wealth, or even knowledge if they truly want to be on the assembly. Once their petition for a seat has been accepted, they can then discuss and vote on the various internal and external affairs of the kingdom. But the Queen's word remains law, of course. You preside over the assembly. That sounds important. He blinks at you, lips twitching into a small smile. It being important is, debatable. It being headache-inducing, most definitely isn't. There is a lull in the conversation, as neither of you seem to find anything else to add. Cyril looks your way with an expectant smile, perhaps waiting for you to speak. Looks like we can romance, Cyril. I don't know about that. Let's go back, I say. Cyril nods and starts walking once you do. You spend the remainder of your day... Let's go on our own, ambling around in the fort. We'll see what happens. The fort is a rather imposing structure, and while it is smaller than the royal castle, it has ample room for a leisurely stroll. At night time you have dinner in the mess hall, in the unusually taciturn company of Ariana. Cyril and Wilfred have settled at another table with 5 officers, and as they dine you hear them discuss replenishment, watch duties, and other affairs revolving around the fort. Wilfred comes to find you as you exit the room.
Boring?
You notice that he keeps addressing you by your first name only. Sir Wilfred, I say with emphasis. And your emphasis doesn't fail to catch Wilfred's attention, even though he doesn't acknowledge it.
I hope you've had a good day,
he says, mostly out of politeness, but still gives pause, waiting for an answer, should you wish to give one. What do we say? Good enough? You? He blinks away, seems to think about it for a moment.
It was, productive, he replies. I'll be taking up your sword training in the coming days, he declares. I know you've had tutors, but with the looming war you should hone your skills to be ready for a real battlefield.
Training? Would it involve you being shirtless? Okay, interesting. It mentioned romance options, didn't it, and choosing the gender, and I just remember at the beginning we could say Sir Wilfred or Lady Jenna, I think it was. And I think when Cyril was introduced as well, it was the same. So I think I've unwittingly chosen two male romance options for my character. I'm not going to sort of go too much down that route yet, anyway. Sounds good to me. Thank you, Sir Wilfred. He closes a hand over the pommel of his sword.
Your training won't be for a while, however. In the meantime, feel free to occupy your time in whichever way you see fit. Good night, Your Highness.
And with that he departs. 2 days later. Morning comes, and as you emerge into the courtyard you're welcomed by a blue sky dotted with small clouds. The weather is getting a little warmer, and you're reminded that your father used to particularly enjoy this time of the year. His love for flowers the reason you had such a luxurious garden back at the castle. You draw a deep breath, surveying the courtyard. Soldiers are already busy with their daily routines. A shock of blonde hair catches your attention, and you instantly recognize Cyril, even though he's currently facing away from you. You also hear chatter and cheers echoing through the courtyard, coming from the other side of the fort. Let's go and see what the loud voices are. You walk around in the sunny courtyard, eventually chancing upon the training grounds, drawn there by the hubbub of the crowd. There is a large circle of soldiers surrounding 2 opponents, one of them Ariana. Wooden sword in hand, she spars with the man a head taller than her, and from her pristine uniform and the dirtiness of his, you surmise that she's not the one on the losing end. You spot Sir Wilfred a little to the side in the shade of an elm tree, his back pressed against its trunk, and he's watching over the happenings with his arms crossed and a focused expression on his face. We'll go and talk to him. He acknowledges you with a faint nod when you approach, his attention on the sparring match.
Ariana's technique is almost impeccable,
He comments, unprompted.
Her footwork might need a little work.
His thumb rubs at the stubble on his chin in a small back-and-forth motion.
But with Aether at her fingertips, she cannot lose a jewel. She is a formidable fighter.
Ariana is indeed impressive. Wilfred nods in acquiescence, his thumb's nail ghosting over his pale pink lips.
The one bright spot in this whole mess is that Ariana will make for an outstanding queen. We're lucky to have her.
Something in his voice, palpable devotion, boundless admiration, catches your attention, and you find yourself searching his rapt facial expression while he watches your sister's sparring match. Rolling her eyes again. You sound quite enamoured, Sir Wilfred. A muscle twitches in his cheek, and his eyes narrow in your direction. He stares a moment, slightly annoyed at your choice of words.
I do have the highest esteem for your sister,
he says eventually. All right. You nod, ready to change the subject. Who's going to be the familiar voice? Oh, it's Ariana. Who's next? A familiar voice calls, and you both twist in its direction. Ariana is requesting a volunteer, apparently still eager to show off her fighting skills to the troops. It crosses your mind that you could be the one to step forward. I'm tired of being seen as second best. This is my opportunity to show our troops that I'm just as strong as she is. I've just seen the two options at the bottom. Your mind made up, you step forward. The crowd parts and lets you through, soldiers stepping aside, casting curious glances at you as you walk in their midst, until you've reached the centre of the training grounds. You stand a few paces away from Ariana, and she casts a curious look at you. Boring. So you want to spar with your big sister? Comes her teasing question. You stare at her, unflinching. Something in your eyes, your determination perhaps, causes her expression to shift and close off, her mirth disappearing. The green of her gaze turns ice cold, and she tosses her wooden weapon aside. It lands near the onlookers, making a swirl of ivory dust rise in a small cloud. With a slow motion, she unsheathes her real lutetium sword, and there is a sudden low metallic hum in the air, resonating in your teeth. Its gold, intricate pommel glimmers in the sun, and as she twirls it one-handedly, its long silver blade reflects flashes of light that make you squint. It cuts through the air when she raises it high above her head and then brings it back down at eye level, pointing it straight at you. Let's show them what a real sword fight looks like, little brother, she says, and there is no hint of sisterly love in her tone, only a barely veiled threat. Your skill with a sword won't allow you to be a match for Ariana, and a small part of you, fueled by reason or your survival instinct, whispers that this is, perhaps, a very bad idea in the making. Do we step away or do we double down? I think we're going to double down. You unsheath your own steel sword, hold it firmly in both hands, and take position opposite Ariana. She swings her sword back to her side with a sweeping whoosh. The crowd around you holds its breath. Ariana paces to the side, slowly, watching you without a blink. The soil crunches under her black boots while she repositions herself to your left. A breeze rises. Leaves rustle. Ariana lunges at you. Your blades connect, and you struggle to stand your ground as she presses forward, forcing you to hold steady while her sword scrapes against yours with an agonizingly high-pitched noise. What's wrong, little brother? Spent so much time poring over your books that you forgot how to handle a sword? Her right boot lodges itself into your stomach, painlessly at first, but then it's pushing you back hard and you barely manage to recover your footing. Or perhaps you never even learned. Her sword whizzes an inch away from your face, its hum piercing through your skull, and you flinch, stepping back and straighten yourself as Ariana swings at you again. You hold your weapon up, ready yourself for a parry, and when your swords clash, hers doesn't stop moving, continues sliding against yours until your blades' guards meet. She's right in your face now, and suddenly her right hand grabs yours and she steps quickly to the side, and she forcefully brings your arm down, out of the way, while levelling her blade at your throat. You've lost, she declares, her tone quite sardonic, to the surprise of no one. She lets go of you and walks away while twirling her sword, her eyes on the crowd. You retreat from the middle of the training grounds as Ariana calls loudly, "Sir Wilfred!" I stay and watch their sparring match. I'm interested to see if that's affected our relationship with Ariana at all. I think she was at 79, so it has dropped. Wilfred's pretty high, and Cyril Lavignac is fairly neutral. Oh, we've become more serious, diplomatic. We've become bolder. No, we're not timid anymore. Emotional, friendly. Friendly's not too bad. Swordsmanship's still at 20. Okay, good. Wilfred comes to stand before Ariana, his steel weapon at the ready. The crowd watches in silence. Ariana lunges forward. Her sword draws an upward circle aimed at Wilfred's throat. He sidesteps smoothly, parries her next strike with the flat of his blade, counterattacks with a swift cut. Metallic clangs fill the air, reverberate through the rapt onlookers. They both seem to slide into well-rehearsed motions, whirling, striking, parrying each other's moves, neither gaining the upper hand for a while. Soon, however, Ariana's parries seem to come a tad later than they should, and she's rattled as she takes a hasty step back, Wilfred's blades missing her by a hair. The commander does not let her catch her breath, following up with a powerful downward strike. Ariana parries barely, her sword held horizontally, and the force of the blow pushes her down, one knee to the ground. Wilfred sidesteps quickly around her and brings down his sword on her unprotected back. The crowd gasps. There is a sudden burst of light, momentarily blinding you, and when your sight returns, Wilfred is on the ground, the tip of Ariana's sword an inch away from his throat. And this, Ariana says, standing tall with a smug smile on her lips, is what a real sword fight looks like. A few hours later. As you emerge from your room, you stumble upon Cyril.
"Hello, Your Highness." He greets you with a small smile. "I heard that you and your sister had a sparring match earlier. Are you all right?"
The only thing that was bruised was my pride.
"I wish a swift recovery to your pride, then," he says with levity, and then changes the subject. "Have you ever been to Barco?" You shake your head. "It's a small village nearby," Cyril explains. "I'm heading out there. Would you like to come along?" Before you can answer, he adds, "I believe getting out of the fort, if only for a few hours, would do you good."
What are we actually going to do there?
Look at their grain stock, mostly. It's a village of farmers. The fort's food supply mainly comes from there. I need to ascertain whether they can feed the reinforcements we'll be getting. Otherwise, we'd have to secure a different avenue for getting supplies.
Sure, I'll go with.
Great, let's head out then.
The trip to Barco, and I'm saying like that because there seems to be quite a lot of French influence in the names of things, so rather than Barcot, I'm saying Barco. It's supposed to take an hour, horses trotting at a leisurely pace. You're flanked by a half-dozen soldiers acting as both your and Cyril's bodyguards. Sun rays are spotty but warm, cut off by fleeting clouds, and a breeze prevents the air from getting too hot. Cyril rides next to you, and you notice an odd wooden steel contraption slung across his back. Seemingly sensing your gaze, he turns towards you.
It's a crossbow,
he explains matter-of-factly. It doesn't look like any crossbow I've ever seen, you remark.
It's the only one of its kind this side of the continent. Plus, it's currently folded up.
He smiles at you.
If you'd like, I could let you try it out on our way back from the village.
I'd like to, yes. Cyril gives you a simple nod. You soon reach the outskirts of the village, an area where stretches of tall trees make way to fields of golden wheat. There is no welcome committee of any sort awaiting your arrival. Cyril seems a tad perturbed by that fact, slowing his mount as you reach the entrance of the village proper. A guard, casually leaning against a wooden hedge, straightens somewhat at his approach, craning his neck up as Cyril says,
"Good afternoon, George. Would you happen to know where Stefan is? He was supposed to be waiting for us."
The guard shakes his head.
"Said nothing about that, I'm afraid. Sorry, Sir Cyril."
"It's quite all right."
You dismount there, right outside the village, and the soldiers accompanying you stride by your sides as you enter, soft soil dipping slightly under each of your steps. The village of Barco smells of warm earth and a hint of flower. Children watch you with unabashed curiosity as you walk by, probably because you and Cyril, in your dark and red military uniforms, as well as your entourage, in shining metallic armours, must make quite the peculiar sight, a stark contrast to the ochre and brown-clad villagers. The houses are small and simple, made of stone, mud and wood. A circle of elderly men is playing a round of cards in the shade of what you assume is a bakery, from the aroma of fresh bread that emanates from it. They don't bother looking up at you. They're focused on jeering at each other while slapping the cards down on a wooden table. You walk for a few more minutes, and Cyril stops in front of a large house to knock 3 times on its front door. Nothing happens. He lets out a sigh, then glances back at you, then bangs on it unceremoniously with a fist. Still, no one answers. Turning towards his soldiers, Cyril lifts a finger and draws several circles in the air. Immediately, half of them scatter and move around and behind the house, out of your field of vision. You hear a thud, something opening, then a crash, and a sudden shout of surprise. Cyril remains unperturbed, barely moving when a middle-aged, bearded man opens the door, bewildered and looking like he has just rolled out of bed.
"Good afternoon, Stefan. Sorry for interrupting your nap,"
Cyril says, not sounding sorry at all.
"Oh, Sir Cyril!"
The man stammers out while soldiers regain their position behind you.
"Are you going to invite us in?"
The man steps aside and Cyril walks in. The other man, Stefan, plus 2 of your soldiers, file after him while the rest remain outside, standing guard around the house. You step inside. The air smells stuffy and sort of woodsy, and you pinpoint a small round bowl with smoking incense as the source of the odour. Cyril pulls a chair out from under a table, its feet scraping the wooden floor. He sits down and watches patiently as Stefan does the same opposite him. I sit down in the free chair next to Cyril.
Would you like some, tea?"
The man asks, voice unsteady. Cyril waves his hand no, then gestures in your direction.
"Stefan, this is Prince Boring d'Arcadie."
Stefan's suddenly bulging eyes remind you of sources.
"Oh, Prince Boring,"
he repeats, standing up to bow deeply.
"I'm deeply sorry for not welcoming you with the honours you deserve. I didn't know you would be visiting."
Such lack of respect deserves a swift beheading. Yes, I understand you were supposed to welcome us by the village entrance. To say his face falls is an understatement. He spins towards the commander.
Sir Cyril," he stammers out. "I apologise, it slipped my mind. I would never."
"It's all right," Cyril says quickly, cutting off. "Please sit down."
"Oh, thank you for your leniency, Your Highness,"
he says, sitting back down. He fiddles with his hands a moment, visibly shaken.
"So, how are our granaries looking, Stefan?"
Cyril asks.
"They're at half capacity. The summer harvest should be good. We'll be able to go through next winter without issue."
Half capacity? What do you mean by that exactly?
It means it's half full."
Stefan ends his sentence with a quizzical lull. Cyril has a small smile for the other man.
"Certainly, that is what half capacity means. But what I need you to tell me, Stefan, is how many people can it feed and for how long?"
Cyril's tone remains polite, but you detect an edge of impatience you haven't heard in his voice before. The other man scratches his greying hair. He fidgets in his seat, brow furrowed and eyes cast down, focused on a burn mark on the wooden table.
Well, it should be enough to feed Fort Queenscliff in the village, probably for 2 years,"
he answers after a long pause. "All right," Cyril says. "Can you arrange for half of that to be sent to the fort as soon as possible?" Stefan nods swiftly. Cyril lets out a short breath, repositioning himself, his arms now on the table.
"Do you have anything else to report, Stefan?"
Laurie's favourite chicken went missing."
Cyril blinks, eyebrows drawing close together in perplexed silence.
But we're not sure yet whether the culprit was a fox or someone with a nefarious purpose. We're still looking into it, but the evidence..."
"Please, Stefan, do you have anything important to report?"
No, not that I can think of."
Cyril stands up and bids the man farewell.
Please wait a moment, Sir Cyril,"
the man requests, getting to his feet. Cyril watches him, waiting for him to continue.
Is it true?"
Stefan stutters.
The Queen Serene and King Lavic have been,
His eyes flicker from Cyril to you, then back again.
"by Commander Stanislas."
Former Commander, Cyril corrects. "Yes, it is true. You did get my message, yes?"
Yes, I did. It's only that,
His fingers twist together.
It's hard to believe that their majesties were, vanquished."
Cyril goes very still. Ooh, how do we react? Vanquished, they were stabbed in the back by someone they trusted. Stanislas is a coward and a murderer. And he will get his comeuppance.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Highness. I didn't mean anything by...
That's quite enough for today. Cyril cuts him off. If the fort doesn't get the grain by next week, I won't be half as cordial when I'm back.
Stefan stumbles on himself and continues fumbling apologies while your group files out of his abode. Cyril closes the door harder than strictly necessary.
I apologize. I didn't expect him to be so tiresome.
How come the village idiot is at the head of the village? A smile creeps over his lips and he does best to fight it back.
He's not usually this bad, Cyril says. He must have been intimidated by your presence.
He watches you a moment.
We'll be leaving shortly. I still need to have a word with the leader of the village's guards.
You head out, meeting with a woman in armour at the outskirts of the village. Sylvie is her name, and she briefs you about Barco's latest news. Nothing much has happened, and while the people are aware that the king and queen have been assassinated, they don't let that get in the way of their daily lives. They don't realise that we're on the verge of a war, she explains, sounding wistful.
Let's keep it that way for now, Cyril says. We don't want the villagers to panic and start fleeing.
Shouldn't they? We're not far from the royal castle.
This will all be over soon, Cyril assures her, his voice steady. Stanislas is only biding his time.
He doesn't tell her that were the villagers to flee, the fort's main source of grain would be compromised. It's time to go back. The sun is slightly lower in the blue sky when you leave Barco.
Do you still want to have a look at my crossbow?
Cyril asks, riding by your left side. Is that some sort of euphemism? Yes, I do. Cyril nods. You soon stop next to a woody expanse. Cyril and you get off your horses and he instructs his soldiers to wait while the both of you dive deeper into the forest. You reach a clearing, high grass and birdsongs welcoming you, and Cyril unhooks the folded weapon off his back. He pulls a lever, and the weapon springs open with a loud clang, taking the familiar shape of a crossbow.
It's the perfect weapon for taking down threats from a distance, he comments.
What kind of threats? You ask, watching him as he loads a bolt in the barrel.
Lately, mostly bandits, though their numbers are rather low. They're to be killed on sight, after all, and I make sure that there are always enough soldiers securing our roads and villages.
Do you see combat often? You wonder.
I haven't in a few years.
He points the weapon towards the ground as he pulls back its string.
Which is perfectly fine by me. There's much you can accomplish without shedding a single drop of blood.
He then raises it, pointing it at a tree.
You have to be mindful of not touching the trigger unless you actually intend to shoot, Cyril warns.
Thwack! You blink, and the bolt has already lodged itself into the trunk, too quickly for you to see.
Here you go.
Cyril hands you the weapon, loaded with a new bolt. The crossbow, a well-crafted wood and metal device, feels solid and heavy in your hands. As you slip your finger inside the notch housing the trigger, you notice Cyril's family name, Lavignac, emblazoned on the weapon's side in gold, elegant lettering. You raise and aim at a tree several feet away. I pull the trigger. As you pull the trigger, you feel a jolt in your arms as the crossbow sends the bolt flying into the grass.
Try aiming a little higher, Cyril suggests, retrieving the weapon.
He returns it to you after loading another bolt in. As you raise the crossbow again, pointing at a different tree, Cyril speaks, his tone mostly neutral.
You seem to get along well with Ariana.
He doesn't immediately resume talking, pausing until you glance at him.
She is an impressive fighter. On the battlefield, no one can stand...
Is that me or him talking?
I think it's him, isn't it? On the battlefield, no one can stand up to her. Successfully leading a kingdom, ensuring its prosperity for decades to come, requires more than raw power, however, even if that power is a gift seen once every few 100 years.
His searching hazel eyes meet yours in a long, appraising look.
Ariana will need allies and good advisers by her side. Would that be a role you'd want to assume?
I mean, there's one positive one and then a bunch of quite negative ones. When I took the sort of political science background, I was thinking it would be because I could sort of help her in a more advisory role. So this seems to be the kind of role that I assumed I would be taking on at the beginning. So yeah, we'll say, of course, I'll do anything in my power to help her.
I'm sure Ariana would be glad to hear it, he says, a small smile curling his lips. She might not realize she needs you, but she will, eventually. You shoot a few more bolts, and after a while Cyril retrieves his weapon, and you head back to the castle. The rest of the day is rather uneventful, which is not such a bad thing in these troubled times. 5 days later. You're sitting in a comfortable cushioned chair at one end of a mahogany table. At the other end is Ariana, and at either side are the two commanders of your armies, Cyril and Wilfred. A map of the continent is laid flat in its middle, its corners yellowed by age. Flickering candles placed nearby cast a soft, wavering light over it. While there is still plenty of daylight left, the curtains have been drawn, setting the room in an orangey haze, and the four of you pore over the map, discussing gathered intelligence and future plans. You've been invited to the council by Cyril, but you are starting to wonder whether your presence should really have been required. In the hour since you've settled in, your opinion has not been requested a single time. How do we do? Well, we can either be proactive about giving our opinion, neutral, or just completely sack it off. But I think I'm going to give my opinion. This is my specialty. This is why I'm here. That didn't stop me from giving it. That didn't stop you from opining at every opportunity. By your fifth interruption, Ariana shoots you a stern glare. We need to secure a steady supply of provisions, Ariana says, turning away from you. So, Cyril, did you visit Barco as planned? Yes, he replies. Supplies have already started arriving. We'll have enough rations for the reinforcements. Ariana nods. Good. Also, if I may, Cyril adds, steepling his fingers over the table, I've been receiving regular reports from our scouts keeping watch over the royal castle. No enemy reinforcements have been sighted, and Stanislas and his troops have made no attempt to leave the castle. Ariana's eyes turn dark at the mention of your parents' murderer, but she blinks it away, refocusing on the present moment. There is a knock at the door, and several letters are laid down in front of Cyril. The main reason I invited you all to this meeting, he says, interrupting himself to thank the soldier as she departs, is that we've finally received replies from the other forts. He stands up to hand over the opened letters to Ariana as she continues. The South is not able to spare any men at this time. With Wilfred gone, the tribes seem to believe the time is ripe for an attack on our positions. Ariana shakes her head minutely. Isn't Captain May down there? What is she doing? I'm sure she's doing
everything to keep the situation under control.
Wilfred crosses his arms on the table. His blue eyes flicker in the dark, candle flames dancing in his irises.
Maybe we went too easy on the southern tribes after all.
Maybe we did. Ariana scoffs, looking down at the letters. We'll have plenty of time to rectify that after we're done with Stanislas. So Cyril, please continue. Cyril is back in his seat. The other forts will be sending troops, about 200 men in total, and I've asked Goldridge to send about 400 men. It will take about 3 weeks for them all to arrive. Only 400? Ariana repeats, a scowl furrowing her features. Why are you requesting so little from the capital? Is under no threat at the moment, unless I wasn't notified? There is no outside threat, Cyril says, intertwining his fingers, and his tone is deliberately slow. But I would rather keep the garrison at almost full capacity as a precautionary measure. He locks eyes with Ariana, watching her intently as he continues. The Noble Assembly is requesting an audience with you. Is that an issue? Not in and of itself, but there is a particular group of nobles trying to gather voices against the upcoming war. Ariana's frown deepens. Cyril's expression is a careful mask of neutrality, as he adds, They seem to believe the ongoing conflict with Coltland is a drain on the kingdom's resources. A drain on the resources? Coltland attacked first! Ariana utters every word with force. Murdered my parents, almost killed me in Boring. I won't rest until there's nothing left of Coltland but a cautionary tale. Of course, I was only relaying their point of view. Cyril's voice is steady. It does seem, however, that Stanislas's rebellion has emboldened them. Calling for the end of armed conflicts is not exactly a new position, but they used to be more subtle about it. You understand why I prefer leaving most of the garrison in Goldridge. We wouldn't want anyone getting foolhardy while we're otherwise occupied. Is someone leading this group of nobles? You ask. Yes, Lord Pascal Lacombe, Cyril replies. He is a decorated veteran, fought in the Khazari invasions.
I remember him, Wilfred interjects. He's a loud-mouthed idiot.
Cyril hides a smile. Yes, he might well be, but he is rather well regarded by his peers, seeing as he's gathered some followers.
What do you believe they would do, were you to summon more men from the garrison?
Nothing too drastic, I suppose.
A strand of blonde hair falls in front of Cyril's eyes when he faces you, and he absently pushes it back behind his ear.
But there is a risk they would use the opportunity to take their grievances to the streets, rather than keep them confined to the assembly. I would rather avoid unrest and riots while we're dealing with Stanislas.
What do they actually want? Apart from an audience.
Officially, the end of the wars with Coltland, Cyril replies. But as Her Majesty pointed out, we can't let a regicide go unanswered.
Can you imagine? Ariana scoffs. Going scot-free after killing the king and queen? Ridiculous. Cyril nods.
I believe they know full well that you will not grant their request for an audience, as its timing is rather poor, nor will you back down from going to war against Coltland. They intend to use that as an argument to back up their claims that the young queen does not lend an ear to the noble assembly, even on grave matters such as war, and try to demand some concessions from you as a gesture of goodwill.
They've got another thing coming if they think that's how any of this is going to go down, Ariana says. Her eyes are unfocused, as if lost in a particularly vivid scene her imagination has conjured, and a small, sly smile soon plays on her lips. Why are these nobles still breathing? Cyril's expression tightens a moment.
They have done nothing outrageous enough to be executed. They have the right to request an audience and to have their opinions heard. Of course, Her Majesty is under no obligation to grant their requests. While the noble assembly has some say in the kingdom's governance, the word of the Queen is still law.
Can you tell me more about the Khazari invasions?
Yeah, it's quite a lot here.
They took place a few years ago,
Wilfred begins, but hesitation blurs his focus.
10 years ago,
Cyril supplies.
Was it really that long ago?
It makes you feel older, doesn't it?
Speak for yourself.
Wilfred's tone is light, intended as nothing more than friendly banter.
We're the same age, Wilfred.
Anyway,
the blue-eyed commander gets back on topic.
The Khazari nomadic tribes tried invading our kingdom 10 years ago, over the eastern coast, crossing the ocean between us with boats loaded with sulfur and explosive powders. It was short-lived, and another failure, as we made sure to leave an impression on them. Your mother did, as we ended up using their weapons against them infused with aether. They must have learned their lesson, as the Khazari haven't been back since.
In any case, Cyril says, lacing his fingers again, I will be sending a letter back informing them that you will not be giving them an audience at this moment, as you are busy fighting for the kingdom.
Thank you, Sir Cyril.
As for the topic of planned assaults on the castle,
Cyril stands up and leans a bit over the map, hands flat on the table supporting him.
If we intend to attack Stanislas before any Coltland reinforcements arrive, we need to strike with the troops that will be at our disposal in 3 weeks' time.
Stanislas must have had about 700 men with him,
Wilfred recalls, rubbing his chin. Well, we'll have double that, Ariana says.
I suggest a siege.
Following Cyril's example... Oh, no, this is Wilfred, isn't it?
I suggest a siege.
Following Cyril's example, Wilfred gets to his feet.
Or at least to make our offensive look like a siege.
He circles the castle on the map with a finger.
While a decoy force pretends to try and get the gates on and up the walls, you will be going around, Ariana.
His finger slides on the paper to the back of the castle.
With aether at your fingertips, you're capable of breaching the castle's walls.
Cyril's eyes widen. Ariana regards Wilfred with quirked brows, then leans closer to the map. I can do that, she states, but that would leave me drained for the rest of the battle.
The bulk of the troops will be at your back, ready to swarm the castle.
Ariana keeps her eyes trained on the map. I don't want anyone else but me killing Stanislas.
The soldiers can be extracted to capture him alive,
Wilfred proposes, his voice a flat tone.
Pardon my question, that stems from my lack of knowledge on the subject matter, Cyril says. Can aether breach a 10 feet thick wall?
It can, if I've had time to gather enough of it. 3 weeks is long enough.
All right. Well, if we're all in agreement, I will take charge of the decoy force, while you and Wilfred breach the walls and swarm the castle. You two know the castle better than me. You can brief and lead the troops more efficiently.
Ariana nods. Sounds good.
What's my role in all this? Prince Boring,
Cyril calls you, and you watch him as he sits back on his chair.
Which part of the plan would you rather be a part of?
Let's go with Wilfred. Let's swarm the castle once it's been breached. We don't need to help Ariana. I mean, what help could we offer? But, getting into the castle might be good to confront Stanislas. I'll go with Sir Wilfred, you decide. Swarm the castle once the wall has been breached. Wilfred gives a swift nod.
We'll be seeing most of the fighting. You'll have to make sure you're ready.
With that last matter settled, the council is adjourned. And that's where I think we're going to leave it for today. We've explored the keep, met the comedic light relief, I think, in the village, and we've got something of a plan that we're gonna enact, and we need to prepare a bit for that. We're not the best with the sword, a little bit of sword fighting, but hopefully we can improve that a little bit before we storm a castle. But thanks very much for watching and listening to this interactive fiction novel, Arcadie Secondborn, and I hope you're enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun reading it, and I'm really interested to see where the story goes. And you just have to look at the Steam page and see the 100% positive comments from everyone who's played it, saying, they love the story, they love the way the characters are written, they love the writing, and I'm enjoying it a lot too, and I hope you are. So if you are, please hit the thumbs up button on the video, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about this playthrough. Are you enjoying it? It'd just be good to get some feedback, and I'll hope to see you next time for the next instalment of Arcadie Secondborn. Bye for now.